Okay, let's unpack this. It is February 14th, 2026.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy
Right.
Valentine's Day to everyone listening. But we are going to, skip the chocolates and the roses today.
Hmm. A slightly different kind of fireworks, sure.
Huh, you could say that.
But honestly, if you look at where the market is going, this is probably more relevant to your portfolio than flowers.
That's fair. We are doing a deep dive today into Ondas Holdings, ticker symbol ONDS. And I want to address the elephant in the room immediately.
Please.
If you haven't looked at this company since, say, 2023 or 2024, you probably have them filed away in your brain as the railroad data guys.
Which, to be fair, is where they started.
Yeah.
Wireless networks for trains, important, but maybe not exactly pulse-pounding stuff.
Exactly. But I was reading through the source stack you sent over the Investor Day presentation from last month, the press release about the Rotron acquisition from just 2 weeks ago. And the transformation is actually wild.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone from monitoring industrial sensors to becoming a major player in what they call kinetic warfare.
Kinetic is the polite industry term for things that explode.
Right. So here's our mission for today. We need to look at this through a cold, hard investor's lens. This stock has hit a market cap of around, $3.35 billion recently?
Roughly? Yeah.
They've got incredibly aggressive growth targets. We need to figure out why. Is this just AI hype and buzzwords? Or have they actually built a business machine that justifies these numbers?
It's the classic question of platform versus product. A lot of defense tech companies have cool gadgets. Very few have a platform.
Right.
And I think what we're seeing with Ondas, especially with the moves they've made in the last 6 months, is that they aren't just selling drones anymore. They're selling an ecosystem. A system of systems, to use their favorite phrase.
Okay, I want to push back on that system of systems concept later because it sounds a lot like corporate jargon to me.
I get it.
And I want to know what it actually means for the bottom line. But first, we have to talk about the news that just dropped on February 2nd, the acquisition of Rotron Aero.
This is the pivot point. If you're tracking the company, this is the signal that the strategy has fundamentally shifted.
Because before this, they were mostly surveillance, right?
Exactly.
Watching borders, checking oil pipes, look but don't touch.
Precisely. It was ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. You fly a drone, you take a video, you send it to a human. But buying Rotron, a UK-based company, pushes them directly into the fight. Rotron makes loitering munitions.
Loitering munitions.
Yeah.
Can we define that for the listener who isn't a military contractor?
Think of it as a suicide drone or kamikaze drone. Unlike a missile that you fire and goes straight to the target, a loitering munition launches, flies to an area, and just waits.
It waits.
It circles. It uses its sensors to hunt for a target. Once it finds one, it dives and detonates. Rotron has the Talon VTOL and the Defender attack system. These are machines designed to eliminate targets.
Okay, so they bought a company that makes attack drones. That's a product expansion.
Yeah.
But in the notes, you highlighted the engines as the real story here. Why does buying an engine maker matter more than the drones themselves? Isn't an engine just a commodity part?
In the civilian world, yes. In the military world, absolutely not. It is the biggest bottleneck in the industry. Think about the global supply chain for military drones right now. Everyone can build a frame. Everyone can 3D print a wing. But to fly long distances with a heavy payload like a bomb, you need a serious engine. And more importantly, you need a heavy fuel engine.
Heavy fuel, meaning not gasoline.
Exactly. Militaries despise gasoline. It has a low flash point, meaning it explodes easily if a stray bullet hits a fuel tank. Plus, the logistics are a nightmare.
Right.
You don't want to ship special gasoline to a forward operating base that runs everything else on diesel. They want to use JPA or diesel, the same stuff that goes in the tanks and the trucks.
So it's a single fuel policy thing.
Right. But building a small engine for a drone that runs reliably on heavy fuel is incredibly difficult engineering. It's hard to ignite, it burns differently. Rotron manufactures high-performance, heavy-fuel propulsion engines in-house. They cracked the code.
I see. So by buying Rotron, Ondas didn't just buy a product to sell, they bought their own supply chain.
They bought reliability. While their competitors are sitting around waiting 6 months for a third-party vendor to ship them a heavy fuel engine.
They're stuck.
They're stuck. Ondas controls its own destiny. They have vertical integration. In the defense world, where speed of delivery is everything right now, that is a massive competitive moat.
That makes sense. It's the difference between being Apple, making your own chips, versus being a PC maker waiting for Intel.
That's a very apt analogy, and when you control the engine, you control the flight time and the payload capacity. That gives them a huge edge when bidding for these government contracts.
Okay, so they have the engines and the kinetic drones. Now, let's zoom out to that buzzword we flagged earlier.
System of systems.
Yes, system of systems.
Yeah.
This is plastered all over their Investor Day presentation from January. To me, it just sounds like marketing fluff. Convince me it's not.
It's actually the core value proposition, but you have to understand the problem they're solving. Right now, the battlefield is fragmented. If you buy a drone from company A, a robot dog from company B, and an anti-drone jammer from company C, you have 3 remote controls, 3 different proprietary screens, and 3 operators shouting at each other trying to coordinate.
Which sounds like absolute chaos in a war zone.
It is. It's inefficient, and it gets people killed. System of systems means all these robots talk to each other. They share a brain. They share data.
So it's a unified platform.
Exactly. And Ondas has spent the last year acquiring the specific pieces to build that unified brain.
Let's look at the roster then, because it's quite the lineup. We've got the air component, obviously, with the Rotron drones we just discussed.
Right, but don't forget the Optimus system. That's their drone in a box.
Right, the autonomous one.
It lives in a docking station, wakes up, flies a patrol, comes back, and charges itself. No human pilot needed. It's the persistent eye in the sky.
Then you've got the ground game. I saw the pictures in the source material of these UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles. There's a 6-wheeled one with a gun turret on it.
That's from the Roboteam acquisition. These aren't toys. These are ground robots that can climb stairs, go into tunnels, or patrol a perimeter. Again, the key isn't just that the robot exists. It's that the drone in the air can tell the robot on the ground what it sees.
So the drone spots a threat behind a wall and tells the ground robot, hey, go engage that target, without a human having to relay the message.
Ideally, yes. The human is on the loop, approving the action, but not in the loop joysticking the movement.
Okay.
But then there's the third leg of the stool, which I think is fascinating. Cyber and electronic warfare. This is the Centrix acquisition they closed late in 2025.
This is the counter-UAS stuff, anti-drone tech.
But it's not just shooting drones down or jamming the signal. Jamming is messy. It interferes with your own radios. Centrix does what's called protocol takeover.
Protocol takeover. Explain that like I'm 5.
Okay, imagine you're driving a remote control car. Jamming is like someone shouting so loud you can't hear the car. Protocol takeover is like someone cloning your car key, unlocking the door, kicking you out of the driver's seat, and driving the car away safely.
So it actually hijacks the drone.
It navigates the communication library of the drone, disconnects it from its original pilot, and commands it to land safely in a designated zone.
That's wild. And I assume that's crucial for things like airports or stadiums where you can't just blast a shotgun into the air.
Exactly. You need a clean, non-kinetic way to neutralize a threat. So if I'm an investor, I'm looking at this portfolio. Air surveillance, air attack, ground robots, and cyber defense.
And the software glue.
And the system of systems is the software glue, the command and control, or C2, that holds it all together.
Okay, I'm starting to buy this system of systems argument. It's an ecosystem play. But ecosystems are hard to build. Do we have any proof that this actually works in the real world? Or is this just a PowerPoint deck?
We have proof. Look at the strategic government tender they won back in December 2025. It's in the notes.
Yes, I highlighted this, the National Level Autonomous Border Protection Program. But governments announce programs all the time. What makes this one special?
The scale and the phrasing? They aren't just buying a few drones to test. The source mentions a multi-year phased deployment of thousands of autonomous drones.
Thousands.
Thousands for 247 surveillance and, quote, assaulting swarm-based operations.
Wow.
This is the validation. This proves that governments are ready to hand over border security to autonomous networks. You physically cannot have a human pilot for every single drone if you are deploying thousands. You need autonomy.
That is a massive scale shift. And speaking of scale, we have to talk about the numbers.
Okay.
Because you can have the coolest robots in the world, but if you run out of cash, it's game over. It's February 2026. They just did their investor day. What is the financial picture?
It's significantly stronger than it was a year ago. If you look at the 2026 revenue target, they raised it. They are now projecting between $170 million and $180 million for this year.
And that's up from a prior estimate of $140 million. So they're seeing demand accelerate pretty rapidly.
Right. And they are targeting $300 million in bookings. But the number that really jumps out, and the one that probably caused some listeners to do a double take, is the balance sheet.
Oh, yeah.
On January 9th, 2026, just last month, They announced a massive $1 billion equity offering.
Okay, let's pause on that. 1 billion with a B. For a company with a market cap of what, 3.35 billion? That is a lot of dilution potentially, but it's also a massive war chest.
It is a huge war chest.
Yeah.
And it tells us something about their strategy. You don't raise $1 billion just to pay the electric bill or cover payroll.
Yeah.
You raise $1 billion because you are going shopping. They are planning to aggressively consolidate this market.
So they're looking to buy more pieces for the system of systems.
Absolutely. The defense tech market is fragmented. Lots of small startups with good ideas but no scale. Ondas is positioning itself to be the aggregator. They mention a 2030 target in the guidance.
I saw that.
$1.5 billion in revenue and a $15 billion market cap.
That's a 5x return on the market cap from where we sit today.
Ambitious. Very ambitious. But if they can execute on this system of systems approach and become the default operating system for autonomous defense, it's not impossible.
It's a different kind of company.
It's about shifting the mindset from we make good drones to we run the defense network.
One thing I don't want to gloss over, even though it's less sexy than the robot dogs, is the legacy business, Ondas networks, the rail stuff. Is that still around? Or are they selling it off to focus on the missiles?
It is still around, and it's important to understand why. It provides a floor. They just had a rollout in July 2025 with a Class A railroad in Chicago partnering with Siemens. This is the 900 megahertz network tech.
Why keep it, though? Why not just go all in on defense?
Cash flow and validation. The defense sales cycle is lumpy. You win a big contract, then you wait. The industrial rail business is steady. It's vital infrastructure. And honestly, it proves they can deliver mission-critical tech that doesn't fail.
That's a good point.
If you can keep a train network running in Chicago during a blizzard, you can probably keep a drone flying in the desert.
Industrial reliability is a good baseline for military reliability. Mission critical means the same thing in both places. People die if it breaks.
Exactly. And it keeps their engineering teams grounded in reality, not just theoretical R&D.
Okay, I want to pivot to something that I found really intriguing in the notes. Ondas Capital. What is this? Are they becoming a venture capital firm now? Because usually when operating companies start playing VC, I get a little nervous about them losing focus.
In a way, yes, they are acting like VCs. This is a strategic initiative deploying about $150 million. But I don't see it as a distraction. I see it as a technology pipeline.
A pipeline.
Look at where they are looking for deals.
The source material mentions they are looking for battle-tested tech from Ukraine and allied nations.
Think about what's happening in warfare right now. The innovation cycle in Ukraine is incredibly fast. Drones are being modified and updated weekly to survive electronic warfare. A standard U.S. procurement cycle takes 5 years. In Ukraine, a product cycle is 5 days.
So Ondas Capital is basically scouting the front lines.
Exactly. They find a piece of tech that has survived real combat electronic warfare resistance, new sensors, new autonomy algorithms, and they bring it to the US or Europe to mass produce it.
That is really smart. Instead of spending 5 years in a lab in Massachusetts trying to guess what works, you just buy what's already working in the field.
It creates a feedback loop. They acquire the battle-hardened tech, integrate it into their system of systems, and then sell it back to the U.S. military or NATO allies who are desperate for modernized capabilities but can't move fast enough to build them internally.
It seems like they're trying to bridge the gap between startup speed and military scale.
That's the entire bet, and it leads to the rebranding we're seeing, dropping the holdings from the name.
Yes, Ondas Inc. And they are moving the headquarters to West Palm Beach, Florida, in Q1 of this year.
Florida is becoming a huge hub for aerospace and defense.
It is. But it's also a signal, right?
It is. They are moving away from the scrappy tech startup vibe and trying to position themselves as an established defense contractor. They want to be seen in the same light as the Lockheed Martins or the Raytheons, just for the autonomous age.
So they're growing up.
They are saying, we aren't a science experiment anymore. We are a prime contractor.
That shift from subcontractor to prime contractor is where the real margin expansion usually happens.
Correct. When you own the contract, you own the relationship with the government.
So let's try to pull all this together for the listener. If I'm looking at Ondas today, on Valentine's Day 2026, what am I actually buying? Am I buying a drone company?
No. You are buying a platform play. You aren't betting on one specific drone model being the winner. You are betting that the future of warfare involves swarms of air and ground robots that need to coordinate autonomously.
Hmm.
Ondas has positioned itself as the company that owns the engines, owns the robots, and owns the software brain that runs them all.
And with $1 billion in the bank, they have the cash to defend that position now.
Correct. They can outlast a lot of smaller competitors or simply buy them. In a high interest rate environment or a volatile market, cash is king. Having $1 billion in dry powder allows them to make moves that their competitors simply can't afford.
Yeah, it's a fascinating pivot. We started by joking about the sci-fi aspect of this, but when you
Right.
read about assaulting swarm-based operations and machines that hunt on their own, it's heavy stuff.
It is. We are watching a fundamental change in how borders are secured and wars are fought. The technology is scaling from experimental to deployed right now. That's what the revenue guidance tells us.
It leads to a bit of a provocative thought to end on. We've talked about the system of systems, where the drone talks to the robot dog and the AI handles the logistics.
The loop is closing.
Right. As Ondas and companies like it move from just watching things surveillance to kinetic action with suicide drones and swarms of thousands, we have to ask, in a system of systems world, at what point does the human operator stop being the pilot and start becoming just a bystander?
Or just a rubber stamp. When the machine moves faster than human reaction time, the human is the bottleneck. And as we saw with the engine supply chain, Ondas is in the business of removing bottlenecks.
That is something to think about. A fascinating, slightly terrifying, but undeniably growing sector.
Absolutely. The numbers don't lie, and the demand is there.
Well, we will leave you with that thought. Thanks for diving deep with us into Ondas. For the learner out there, keep your eyes on the skies and the earnings reports. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.